Chapter 8. Why do you have to do a biopsy? Leah asked Dr. Thomas. A biopsy is nothing more than a diagnostic tool. Leah cut him off. I know what a biopsy is. That's how the doctor discovered that my grandmother had cancer. She gasped. Do you think I have cancer? Is that why you don't want to do a biopsy? Now calm down. There are some cancers that have a hereditary factor, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have cancer. I don't want you to make a false diagnosis. And since we don't know what's wrong with you yet, I want to do this test. I'll put you under an anesthetic, take out a tiny sample of bone tissue from your knee, and send it to the lab for evaluation. Your knee might be sore for a day or two, but that's all. Leah felt afraid. Do whatever you have to. The doctor patted her arm. You'll be okay, Leah. We'll take good care of you. I'll see you Monday morning. He smiled reassuringly and left. Leah pulled the bed covers up to her chin and closed her eyes. She didn't want Charity or Rebecca to see the tears that were about to roll down her cheeks, as for the first time since entering the hospital she surrendered completely to memories of her grandmother. Grandmother Hall had tried to stay involved in Leah's life, even after Leah's father had abandoned them. It wasn't easy. For reasons Leah still didn't understand, her mother had tried to keep Leah away from her grandmother. Her mother didn't want Grandma Hall to see Leah at all, but Grandma Hall found ways to keep in touch. She sent Leah letters even when they lived in the same city, and whenever she could, she stopped by Leah's school during recess to visit. Leah remembered her grandmother as cheerful and smiling. She carried hankies that smelled like roses, and she loved to wear red. More importantly, she was Leah's only tie to her father, the father her mother wouldn't allow her to mention. The father Leah longed for, instead of the steady stream of men who had dated her mother. Leah's grandmother had told her stories about her father when he was a little boy and showed her photos of him as a child, as a soldier in Vietnam, as a new father proudly holding baby Leah. And when she'd asked, why did my daddy go away, Grandma Hall would say, he just had to go, honey, but he always loved you, and he still does. When Leah was 10, Grandma Hall had gotten sick, and Leah's mother had relented slightly about allowing Leah to visit her. Although feelings between the two were strained, Leah's mother had often brought Leah to the hospital. Hi, darling, her grandmother would say, and she would stroke Leah's hair tenderly. Leah had hated the hospital. Her grandmother looked awful, gaunt, and pale, with ivy stuck into bulging blue veins. Leah hated the way the place smelled, and feared the equipment tubes and syringes, as well as the nurses who shuffled in and out, dispensing medicine but bringing her beloved grandmother no relief. Secretly, Leah hoped one day to walk in and see her father visiting his mother, but it had never happened. Grandma Hall lived 3 months from the time she was diagnosed. She might have survived longer to visit. Grandma Hall was sobbing, and she might have survived longer, except that one day when Leah and her mother went to visit, Grandma Hall was sobbing uncontrollably. He's dead, Roberta. My boy's dead. I got a letter from some hospital out in Oregon. They found him unconscious in an alley. That was when Leah knew her father was gone forever, and after that Grandma Hall went downhill quickly. She died, a shadow of herself, hooked to machines in pain, alone in the hospital. And now, Leah thought, here I am, all alone in a hospital. Grandma Hall, if she had been here, would have held Leah's hand and told her not to worry, that she'd protect her, but Grandma Hall was dead. That left Leah's mother, and tender, loving care had never been one of her strong suits. Leah wiped her eyes with the edge of her bedsheet and rolled over. Charity was preparing for bed on a rollaway cot that had been brought into the room. How's Rebecca? Leah asked. Her fever's down. Charity was wearing a long nightdress of cotton flannel, and her light brown hair hung down her back in a long braid. And the swelling on her arm has gone down too. I have prayed for these things to happen, and I have asked God to let her go home in time for Christmas. It would be the same without all of us together. Are you trying to tell me you believe your prayers made her well, and not the medicine she's been taking? Of course the medicine helped her, but prayer is strong medicine too. Sometimes it is all we have when nothing else works. You know, I want Rebecca to get well, but I'm going to miss the two of you when you leave. And Ethan, too, she thought. What did your doctor tell you? Charity asked. Leah explained about the biopsy. I will say extra prayers for you that this biopsy gives your doctor the answer he is looking for, said Charity. They told one another good night, and Leah switched off the light over her bed. Dim light from the hallway leaked under the bottom of the door, and the wall switches glowed in the dark. As her eyes adjusted, Leah could see Charity kneeling beside her bed, her hands folded and her head bowed. The simplicity of the pose brought a lump to Leah's throat. She wondered if there really was a God after all. Then she thought of her beloved Grandma Hall. dying in the hospital. Leah was touched by Charity taking this time to pray on her behalf, but nothing had helped her grandma when she was sick. Not prayers, not doctors, and not all the love Leah held in her heart for her. What could possibly help Leah? Leah was awakened by a night nurse for vitals, but long after the nurse had left the room, she remained awake. She kept thinking about Ethan and how attracted she was to him. In spite of his simple and unsophisticated ways, maybe that was what attracted her. He was single-minded and focused, confident of what he believed, and positive of the direction his life would take. Leah couldn't say any of those things about herself. She meandered through school, doing just enough work to get by. She vaguely thought about college, but only because it seemed like the thing to do, not because there was anything particular she wanted to study or learn. Yet she didn't want to be like her mother either, drifting from place to place, marrying and remarrying, always searching for something more or better or just different. Leah sighed. All this thinking wasn't helping her go back to sleep. She turned over. With a start, she saw a woman standing beside Rebecca's bed. When did she come into the room? Leah peered through the gloom and recognized her as the nurse who'd come in the night before. The woman leaned over Charity's cot and smoothed her covers. Then she went to Rebecca's bed and took the child's small hands in hers. Leah heard Rebecca giggle quietly, then began animatedly whispering with the nurse. Watching the scene, Leah realized this nurse really had a way with children, and Molly had certainly done a lot to make Leah feel cared for and comfortable. Nursing, maybe that would be something she'd like doing. Leah toyed with the notion, turned it over in her head, and discovered that she liked it. Leah continued to watch the night nurse and Rebecca whispering, and slowly a calming peace stole on her. Her eyelids grew heavy, and as the silence of the night closed around her, she fell asleep. I'm hungry, Rebecca's voice woke Leah and Charity. Leah rubbed the sleep from her eyes and saw the little girl sitting up in her bed with her doll in her lap. Morning sunlight flooded the room. Are you okay, Rebecca? She asked. Yes, but I'm hungry. Charity got out of bed and scurried to Rebecca's bedside. She felt her forehead with the back of her hand. I think her fever is gone. She flashed Leah a smile. It seems she is well. That's a relief. Molly walked through the doorway. What's a relief? We think Rebecca is much better, Leah said. I'm hungry, Rebecca repeated. That's a good sign, Molly said with a grin. The breakfast trays are on their way, so let's get a temp before you eat. She slid a digital thermometer under Rebecca's tongue. While she was waiting for the readout, she asked Leah, Did you sleep well? Except for when the nurses came for vitals in the middle of the night, I didn't think I'd ever get back to sleep. Then another nurse came in, and watching her and Rebecca must have made me sleepy, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. What other nurse? Gabriella, Rebecca said around the thermometer. She's my friend. She comes in and talks to me. Gabriella? She must be brand new. She's nice, said Rebecca. Well, it must be nice to have that much free time. Molly removed the thermometer when it beeped. But that's the difference between the day and night shifts. Maybe I'll switch and not have so much work to do. Who'll I talk to all day, Leah kidded. Molly chuckled and turned to Charity and said, Good news. Your sister's temperature is normal. Charity clapped. Wonderful. When can she go home? Not until her doctor says she can. Infections can be ordinary. We want to be sure it's truly gone before we release her. Leah thought of how lonely it would be without company in the room. Are you leaving me, Rebecca? Rebecca's face puckered. Oh, Leah, you are my bestest ever friend. I'll come visit you. Won't we, Charity? Everyone laughed, but Leah knew that once the two girls were gone, they wouldn't be back. Leah doubted that Charity's parents would allow her to make the trip again, where there were no reason other than a social call. Later that morning, after Leah had showered, washed her hair, and put on makeup, she went to the library on the pediatric floor and checked out some books about nursing. She was reading at the table in her room when Ethan came in, smiling. Rebecca squealed with delight. Ethan beamed at his sisters, then cast a sparkling blue-eyed glance at Leah. I told you I would to return, and guess what? I have brought you all a big surprise.